So it's a pleasure today to welcome you all. Thank you for joining this practical platform webinar, part of a series that we've been running related to topics of interest into trialists and to the platform trial. And today we have a fantastic speaker with us. We have Dr. Hiroki Saito. He's one of our fantastic international fellows in the Interdepartmental Division of Critical Care Medicine here at the University of Toronto. He's been spending time with us working at the University Health Network and Sinai Health System. He's a board-certified intensivist from Japan, as well as in infectious diseases from the United States. He's been involved with us here with practical, but also has a lot of experience with previous involvements in REMAP-CAP and SNAP, two other adaptive platform trials that have been conducted globally. His research interests include the clinical trial ecosystem and global health. And so Hiroki's going to be speaking to us today about multi-platform trials, what, why, and how. So thanks so much, Hiroki, for speaking with us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Eddie, for your generous introduction, and thank you for joining to this webinar today. So before further ado, I'm going to start. So I have no disclosure. And then today, here's my learning objective today. And then Eddie already kind of mentioned, but I kind of started with my brief background because many of you may not know about me. So I also, on top of my clinical experience in Japan, the US, and Canada for critical care infectious disease, also I used to work for World Health Organization in Geneva, Switzerland. Also, I used to do volunteer work in Uganda when I was a PGY 325. And then I had been an education lead, or I started working on this practical last year when I joined this international fellowship in Toronto. And I studied REMAP-CAP in Japan, were involved in Panther, plus I studied in SNAP trial in Japan as well. So I kind of, I'm quite interested in clinical trials in resource challenge setting, including LMSCs, or maybe Japan is part of actually resource challenge setting for clinical trials per se. So, and then today's topic may sound a little bit conceptual because as you can see later, I think multi-platform trial is a quite advanced and evolving right now actively. But I just want to, as a disclosure, today's talk may be slightly different from others simply because I'm not the leading expert in this field per se, or my motivation to be part of this trial to be a part of this group is I know there are so many sites and regions with totally different enabling environments, but we know that there's also a concept of positive deviance where a certain proportion of innovators, early adopters actually change the society, the entire society to improve the, the overall population. So I hope that some of my talk will be relevant to you practice or research setting, so you can continue to improve your environment around you. So current situation clinical trials. So before I jump into multi-platform trials, I'm going to talk about some background information. And we often talk about research waste, which was particularly highlighted during the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is a paper where authors reviewed more than 2,000 trials for COVID-19, and then only about a quarter of enrolled patients contributed to RCTs with adequate power, or only 5% of the total COVID-19 trial arms was described as randomized and adequately powered. What about the enrollment or recruitment rate? We know that the recovery trial, very well-known trial, well-known platform trial response to COVID-19, the average recruitment ratio was reported to be 11%, with a variable recruitment ratio across the regions in UK. On the other side of the coin, still recovery is very pragmatic, with the eligibility is not so tight, but still in reality, 90% of COVID-19 patients were not enrolled. So also, this is kind of a summary paper, JAMA, almost 10 years ago, describing some characteristics of the platform trials. And then we all know that platform trial enables multiple investigations, interventions simultaneously. But there are certain characteristics such as some assumption of heterogeneous populations or treatment effects or funding sponsor issues. And then this is another review article where authors describe the trend of platform trials. As you can see here in the light bars, the number of platform trials dramatically increased in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And then about 6% of the platform trials are actually now international. It's kind of interesting to see here, like industry-sponsored platform trials are kind of more international, and about half of the platform trials led by academia is international. But I'm pretty sure platform trials are generally becoming more and more international. And then they apply different adaptive designs, as you can see here, like responsive adaptive randomization or adaptive enrichment, etc. And then about 3/4 of the platform trials use common control arms. I will explain a little bit later about this common control arms. And then it's always debatable about concurrent versus non-concurrent control arms, but apparently about half of the platform trials tend to avoid mentioning whether they apply non-concurrent versus not. And then I think this is worth to mention, about 40% of arms have been already closed when they review their papers. And there are certain proportion of arms being closed due to external evidence or practical operational reasons. Later, I will explain what external evidence is meant to be, but also it's interesting to know funding is a risk factor for platform trials, mainly led by academia as well. And I also acknowledge that many of you have already done the similar exercise in this paper. The findings are quite similar to what the one I explained just now. But it's also interesting to know the cost was the least common factor when deciding to add new interventions. I thought it was interesting too. And we kind of already know what the adaptive platform trial means, but this is kind of a summary statement made by WHO here. Large multi-state studies governed by master protocol with multiple arms and with scope to remove or add arms and to adjust allocation criteria to the various arms in response to ongoing data analysis, as you can see here. Compared to traditional conventional trials, adaptive design, review the data and adapt, and then we continue to evolve as a trial group. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the multi-platform trial concept now. And then like, even though I was the part of the team when we created this webinar series, and I'm the one who came up with this idea of a multi-platform trial as a topic of this webinar, I was kind of sad and like happy and sad when I was asked to talk about this topic, because simply, you know, this topic is quite difficult challenge to me. So, you know, I never heard about this multi-platform trial per se until we published a paper on anticoagulation for COVID-19, which I will talk about this later. But just to be thorough about this topic, I just did a PubMed search this time. So as you can see here, we have seen so many platform trials coming out from PubMed, more than 27,000. compared to that, when I searched with multi-platform trials or a multi-platform trial, like I've got so tiny number of hits actually. So when I reviewed all these papers myself, I just found they used multi-platform in many different ways. And then the majority refer to a research or cohort or foundation or analytic methods like omics database or software like a mobile app as a single platform. And then by connecting that, they often mention as multi-platform trials. Which was not I was looking for, to be honest. So for the purpose of this topic today, this is the kind of tentative definition of multi-platform trials. The same intervention protocol was applied across multiple platform trials and analyzed as a single trial. As I think some mention MPRCT representing multi-platform randomized control trial that may reflect better in a way. So I'm going to show you some examples of multi-platform trials. I think many of you are already about the papers, but I think I'm gonna explain a little bit from more like an operational perspective rather than focusing on the research results. So these are the papers in New England Medicine about anti-coagulation strategy for COVID-19, depending on strategy and depending on severity state, whether a severe COVID-19 or moderate COVID-19. And just very briefly, the trial for severe COVID-19 was stopped when the pre-specified criterion for futility was met for therapeutic dose in anticoagulation. On the other hand, on the right side, the other part for moderate COVID-19 showed increased probability of survival and the organ support 3 days. So here are some direct citations from the papers, quotes from the papers that describe some of the features of the platform trials and the multi-platform trials. And importantly, these two papers are from one large multi-platform trial. And like I mentioned, a platform trial may enroll heterogeneous population, and so does a multi-platform trial. And I'm not going to too much of detail of the result of these results, but instead I would like to highlight some data describing how this multi-platform trial was conducted here. So the number of enrollment of each platform trial varies depending on the disease severity state, and suggesting each platform trials has a different trial network in terms of sites and wards. And then also it is quite international here. So the almost 400 sites across 10 countries for severe COVID-19 versus more than 120 sites in 9 countries for moderate COVID-19. And then they mentioned also like this: the collaboration allowed us to reach a conclusion of futility with probable harm much more quickly than would have been possible as independent platforms. And then similar statement is described here for the moderate COVID-19 as well. So I think essentially these examples clearly mentioned the importance of multi-platform trials. It's clear that multi-platform trials enable us to study with a larger sample size, and we could potentially reach answer more quickly, rapidly. And this is another example of harmonization. I would say a lot of it may not necessarily be a platform trial per se, but they actually harmonized platform trials and randomized control trial very nicely. As you can see the title here, two harmonized RCTs. So they actually, I think, pre-planning was quite well. Before recruitment was started, the investigators harmonized and decided to pull data from two randomized control trials. And then both trials prospectively adopted the same intervention outcomes and statistical plan, etc., as you can see on the right column of this table here. Even though they went through different processes internally here, they essentially harmonized some of the essential elements of the study. And then this is a comparison between LOVIT-COVID and REMAP-CAP. LOVIT-COVID was conducted only in Canada, while REMAP-CAP was international. And then there are some characteristics, and I think 10 sites participated in LOVIT-COVID in Canada. And then I think the major difference between these two was control group. LOVIT-COVID used placebo, while REMAP-CAP used standard of care. And then REMAP-CAP applied response adaptive randomization as one of the feature of APT. And this is kind of a very busy console diagram to compare between LOVIT-COVID and also vitamin C domain of REMAP-CAP. But I think to me, the importance or the highlight, one of the highlights of this figure is here, down bottom here. It says of these 7,800 adults here, more than 7,200 were used for COVID adjustment, which is to improve statistical efficiency as a whole. And then they essentially reported a single result by harmonizing, combining these two trials here. And I will briefly explain also the result later, but here both trials stop recruitment as advised by DSMB when statistical triggers for fatigue and harm were met for both drugs in the REMAP-CAP trial. And then I'm going to talk about the challenges of multi-platform trials. So many of you are already, I guess, involved in this paper, but this perspective described several platform trials in critical care medicine. And then they presented a SWOT analysis, strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats of platform trials in critical care. And here are some potential weakness and threats I just summarized from here. So pre-planning may be important, or infrastructure capacity required is to build. It can be quite important, particularly in the context of a pandemic, or regulatory complexity. Funding may be also a challenge as well. Also governance, and then how to enable new investigators to join, and then academic recognition maybe also needs to be optimized, or we have to value collaborative efforts. I think these are, nice summary of SWOT analysis of platform trials in general. So this is the slide I used when I talked about APT from WHO again, but now I'm talking about multiple. And then when it comes to multi-platform trials, like now it's gonna be the issue of who is to be represented, like regions, vulnerable populations, or maybe it can be also related to future access to future access issues to interventions, etc., etc. So to me, the representativeness or inclusiveness of a multi-platform trials is related to the governance. And then the trial infrastructure or network of a single platform trial is large, so that the multi-platform trial will be even larger. And then pre-planning like a COVID, and the remap cap would be always preferable. But a platform trial is adaptable by nature, so that a multi-platform trial also is adaptable by nature. Then we as a trialist should be also good at adapting and the governance as we run the trial. So good governance will help and adapt and evolve as we run the trial. At the same time, I think from a newcomer like me or a logger in the positive deviance theory, as I showed in my slide, who comes from like a different almost a planet from a clinical trial perspective, I think I just feel like you guys are so smart and advanced that I sometimes feel how I could contribute to the entire huge trial group. And it's challenging to be as inclusive as possible, but at the same time, we want to avoid some like a colonialism type of approach when we engage other people. Oops. Did I lose my, hold on. Did I lose the screen?
No, you're good. We see governance of the multi-platform trial.
Okay, good. Sorry. Yeah. So also it's interesting to think about study interventions across multiple platform trials. So in an adaptive platform trial, we add and drop interventions. So as we grow as a multi-platform trial, engaging more colleagues and stakeholders, becoming more international, the selection of interventions may be a challenge as well. And for example, RemapCap, each site can contribute to a domain when they can provide at least 2 interventions of a domain. But at the global or national level, we may need to consider acceptability or potential interaction with other domains interventions, or a relationship with various stakeholders in a multi-platform trial. And we have to think how to prioritize potential new interventions to be added. And this is more like an example of an operational challenge. So what if a site participates in multiple platform trials simultaneously? And then this is an example from Lobit COVID and the Remap Cap on the left-hand side here. So apparently in Canada, there are 2 sites that participate in both trials at the same time. I just read a little bit in the appendix. They said at 10 sites in Canada, enrollment occurred in both Lobit COVID and the non-vitamin C domains of Remap Cap. And then at one of these sites, they said patients were assessed for eligibility first for Lobit COVID first. And if it's not eligible, then they were assessed for the COVID vitamin C domain of Remap Cap. So it's interesting to see how they actually operationalize different platform trials simultaneously at the participating site. Sorry. So and then practical is closely working with Panther and Caviars, and in Canada, the interventions for Panther and Caviars are provided as part of practical, and then that data across these trials is merged properly. So this is how we run, but we need to learn like how how to operationalize multiple platform trials. And then when I talk about the interventions, I also think that the standard of care, SOC, is also another important aspect. I think so many people, or so many of you have already considered the same way. But I have encountered, a couple of papers talking about standard of care in critical care. And then these are the summary tables of what medication was actually provided in the SOC arm for REMAP-CAP active for attack multi-platform trials. And then this is for severe COVID-19 trial, and this is moderate COVID-19 patients. As you can see here, the anticoagulant drug and also the dosage equivalent are quite variable, reflecting various sites from various regions. And then these are graphs of enrollment rate of vitamin C domain of REMAP-CAP and then LOVIT COVID. I mean, REMAP-CAP actually, I'm not talking about LOVIT COVID here. But in severe state of COVID-19, Asia contributed a lot, then followed by UK. And then for a moderate state of COVID-19, North America picked up quickly. Then later, Asia enrolled more. And then I think this is a famous study to determine the transfusion threshold in ICUs. I know there are so many other trials now for transfusion threshold for different populations now. But I understand lots of discussion was made to determine liberal strategy as a control arm of this study based on the preceding practice survey and to determine what the prudent care would be for physician in Canada. Otherwise, this trial would have been impractical or not feasible. So the paper was published in 1999. Now we are in 2025. So we are more international. And then how can we define SOC properly in a multi-platform trial? And this is another example on the right-hand side from oncology field, which I also wanted to learn from because I think they must be more experienced than I am as a ICU physician or ID physician in Japan. And this review actually assessed the SOC in cancer clinical trials and to see how many actually picked up their control arms as per NCCN practice guidelines, which is National Comprehensive Cancer Network based in the US. And then they revealed that trials whose recruitment was from more than 4 countries or outside the United States were less likely to offer control arms consistent with the NCCN practice guideline, which kind of can be expected. So I think I spent a little bit time on explaining the SOC, but this is why I kind of think this is important. So this is a very simple directed cyclic graph, which helps better understand the causality. And the T as treatment interventions and the O as outcome here. And then this is a little bit complex one, but I'm going to explain a little bit. So I think I'm going to talk about anticoagulation as an example. So we know that outcomes may change as time goes, as other management strategies improve or target pathogen may change like COVID-19 strain, so like here. And then the time factor is also associated with the regions where a trial is conducted, as I showed in the different slide here. And then depending on regions, some may have better access to low molecular weight heparin versus others may use simply just unfractionated heparin like Japan, where low molecular weight heparin is only approved for certain post-surgical patients. And then the lesions, of course, are associated with the population they recruit. Like in Japan, the recruitment is 100% Asian Japanese. And then it is known that Asian, at least Japanese, are prone to bleeding, so the treatment effect may be heterogeneous compared to other people. And also, they use response adaptive randomization is applied. That means those regional factors can also influence the treatment interventions as well. So I'm not a biostatistician. I know that we can apply lots of adjustments, such as like a Bayesian time machine, or anything, but at the same time, we cannot adjust unmeasured covariates if there are any. So it's all about like a balance between like effect size versus relevance to current practice, or I think different platform trials can carry different natures between explanatory versus pragmatic, like Lovett COVID use placebo versus REMAP-CAP COVID vitamin C domain use the SOC, for example. I mean, it's not like a black and white concept. It's more like a proportional, but we have to consider. And then when it comes to a multi-platform trial, this can be more complicated. And then I'm not gonna talk too much on the biostats because I'm not a biostatistician, but I thought that this is a very interesting and nice example of harmonization of or multi-platform trials. So Lovett trial initially studied vitamin C for sepsis patients. So in this example, original Lovett trial found vitamin C increased the risk of death for sepsis for patients with sepsis. So statistical triggers for futility and harm were added to this harmonized trial. And then when REMAP-CAP did interim analysis, they actually met the statistical triggers for futility and harm, which were added as a result of the Lovett trial. And then both trials were terminated based on these statistical triggers met. So I thought that this is a quite good way of utilizing evidence, but people may say external evidence, but when a multi-platform trial or network is large enough, external may not necessarily be external anymore. So I think this is a quite interesting and good example. And this is an example how the active-for attack and the REMAP-CAP were structured from operational perspective. Yuan shared this slide, and then he keeps telling me how difficult it was to manage DSMB for these trials, actually. So there are 3 different DSMBs. Somehow DSMB joined, so one designee from each DSMB joined the other DSMB, so they kind of communicate each other, but still there were 3 different DSMBs. So he even suggested, can we just have a single DSMB model? I think we have to, consider how we structure DSMB in a multi-platform trial. And of course, we kind of already know, but funding may be also a challenge as well. People say a platform trial possibly is cost-effective, but what about the multi-platform trials? And then what about the relationship with the commercial entities? And then this right bottom figure is from my paper. Essentially, I did a health policy type of research, doing narrative reviews and then doing lots of interviews across different stakeholders in Japan, the US, and the UK. And I found so many, most of the funding in Japan lasted less than 1 year. So it's quite challenging to put fundings together to run the multi-platform trial in the current funding model. And also this is ethics or regulatory aspects. I think we all know that this aspect is also quite a challenge. And then I know a single model with a parallel submission is now possible in Europe, saying EU clinical trials information system. So I'd like to hear their experiences, but we haven't figured out how to make things streamlined across other regions outside EU. So I'm gonna now wrap up future directions. So in the era of AI or what we call learning health system, I think healthcare will be more personalized in the concept of precision medicine. And then the same biological abnormality can arise from multiple different insults, like here trauma, pancreatitis, infection, surgery. I think we know this paper quite well. But currently, we tend to run the trial based on syndromes like sepsis, acute hypoxic respiratory failure, ARDS, etc., etc. But I think, as you can see here on the right side, some physiologic states of interest can be now identified and then can be differentiated. And then I think that potentially each can be transformed into platform trials. And that possibly maybe in the future, by using biological treatable treat, we could also make multi-platform trials. I think TRADES trial, platform trials led by Manu Sankari in UK, may be heading to this kind of direction. But I think it's quite interesting to know if we as a trialist can connect trials, platform trials with different syndrome targets. And instead, we kind of rely on biological treatable traits. And then we often say platform trials are perpetual by nature. I think that applies to multi-platform trials, but we cannot underestimate the importance of human being as soft capital or social capital. I think international platform trials show their potential to bring together those who contribute to the, advancement of medicine and science across borders. I think I published this letter a while ago, but I should have changed the title a little bit. So I think multi-platform trials definitely should be international. And we cannot forget patients, family, and the public. This is another example. Practical Panther and REMAP-CAP are connected and established a PPI group called the Global Patient and Public Advisory Group. And then, so they always communicate each other. I try to learn from this meeting as well, because PPI is one of the field Japan needs to improve as well. And then, as you have learned today, I think still multi-platform trials is a kind of blue ocean. Nobody knows where we are heading, or nobody knows what we are talking about. So we plan to have a Delphi survey to reach a consensus how to harmonize core elements for multi-platform trials. So it's now under the ethics review. So I plan to invite you guys in the near future as a panelist. So I think your contribution will be much appreciated. So summary, multi-platform trials are promising and evolving, and then practical is in close collaboration with Panther and Caveat and other platform trials. And it's easier said than done, but I think, as I mentioned, it achieves a larger sample size, and it can reach answer quickly, and it can be more generalizable, so it's definitely worth it. And then open, transparent communication will shape the future of multiple platform trials. And then I think I tend to think about RCT as an example. I mean, we often say in the epidemiology class, RCT is a counterfactual, but in reality, our life is not counterfactual. So I think our ongoing discussion is going to be quite important to shape the future of multi-platform trials. And thank you so much for listening.
Thanks so much, Hiroki. Very sweeping overview of multi-platform trials. As you mentioned, a relatively new phenomenon, I would say, in the world of trials. So since COVID-19, so great job. I'm going to open the floor for any questions, comments. John, please.
Yeah, so thanks so much, Hiroki. That's a great overview, and I appreciate it. I mean, this is such a rapidly changing area in clinical research. We're still sort of getting used to the concept of a platform trial as opposed to a conventional RCT. And so thinking about multi-platform trials is taking it to another whole level of complexity. But it's also moving towards the time when research will actually be embedded within clinical care and ongoing. And you may continue to ask that question over time. But it strikes me one of the aspects of multi-platform trials that I've not seen discussed, and I'm interested if you have or if you've had any thoughts on it, is a multi-platform trial that uses, so in COVID-19, we looked at a single disease, COVID-19, with varying states, and a single intervention, vitamin C, heparin, et cetera. Are you aware of any that look at multiple different diseases or populations in a single intervention? For example, antibody to tumor necrosis factor in viral infections, hypoxemic respiratory failure, traumatic brain injury. Because I think that's probably another whole dimension of the platform trial that needs to be thought about and developed. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's I think one direction I kind of summarized in one of the slides I showed. When we also discussed this the Nature Medicine paper of let me see. Yeah, I think I was thinking when I was listening to your kind of question, I was thinking about this thing. I think in the future, I think we may tend to focus on more treatable traits rather than syndrome-based per se. But I haven't encountered a trial per se focusing on like a treatable trait at this moment. I think traits trial in UK may be leading this field. But I think at the same time, I didn't mention this at the beginning, but basket trial essentially aims to target different populations with similar or same interventions. So I think the concept can be similar to basket trial, but this can be also connected across the different platform trials. So I think the concept is there, but nobody has head to that direction yet, I guess, as far as I know.
Maybe I could pick up on John's point there just to get the group's feedback, because John, I think this is a very interesting question. For instance, we had long considered, perhaps I mentioned this to you in the past, like having not a pharmaceutical intervention across a number of different, say, disease states or conditions, but we thought about having an ECMO platform trial. So ECMO is a single intervention, but crossing many different indications: respiratory, cardiogenic shock, cardiac arrest, maybe other emerging indications. We actually felt that would actually be quite challenging. Like already, as you could hear, the apparatus of a platform trial is already very challenging, although that's becoming more and more refined as more groups are picking that up. But just thinking about across the different disease states, the sort of massive expertise that would need to be assembled, right? Because the cardiologists were the specialists in a certain indication. Other resuscitation experts might have been for the ECPR component, us pulmonologists and people interested in ventilation and this sort of thing on the respiratory side. So we actually thought that wouldn't be the most efficient way to organize a platform trial centered around a specific intervention, and that it would be better to, again, for instance, practicals now included the respiratory side of the ECMO interventions that we're interested in, and we've left cardiogenic shock and these other sorts of things. I don't know what the group feels about that, but we certainly considered it, but I wouldn't say discarded, but we felt it might be less efficient than leaving it to the syndrome or disease-specific platform trials to take up.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to think like where the ideal aspect of a platform trials collide with the kind of operational or theoretical, efficiency of a trial. So yeah, thank you for, supplementing comment, Eddie. Definitely, it's interesting.
But you could even, Eddie, you could think about pooling results across several different trials in those different populations. I mean, it's a little bit semantic, I think, the idea, the extent to which a trial is a standalone autonomous thing versus it can kind of bleed and you can share data amongst trials. So admittedly, it's not been done, but I do think these are kind of important thoughts to be directing our attention to as we move this forward.
Yeah, I think just as another example, you used the word bleed there, John, which I think is good because, for instance, one of the examples we sort of suggested is that across different disease states in this intervention, we need to study how to use anticoagulation, for instance. And that's germane both to ECMO for cardiac reasons, for respiratory reasons. It's sort of a device-specific thing. And you might study the whole population and stratify or look at subgroups or that sort of thing, and the heterogeneity. So like we thought there was a lot of things that were in common across the disease states because of this shared intervention here, like how to anticoagulate, how drugs might work on it, this sort of thing, like for the pharmacokinetic point of view. But then obviously different indications for the use of the intervention amongst different groups and that sort of thing. So, well, thank you for raising that. I think both Hiroki, your discussion and John's sort of comments there. So maybe good impetus to rethink some of our strategies around that using a common intervention.
Yeah, thank you. I think if I can supplement one thing as a larger standpoint of the positive deviance theory, I think from Japan, I think maintaining the research foundation warm, keeping them warm, it's quite challenging and difficult compared to CCTG group in Canada. I think a trial network itself can provide lots of operational benefits. So I think, if we can connect research across different disease entities, etc., like you mentioned, like ECMO, I think it's quite promising, at least from a laggard standpoint, actually. Yeah.
Great. Any other questions or comments? I think I see Fiona left a comment in the chat sort of echoing that idea that it probably depends. The context is important. It depends on the disease or intervention. In Victoria, we have a basket trial developing for FMT and IBD, IBS, Crohn's, and C. diff. So another example of, different thinking depending on the context or the intervention that's under study.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Any other questions or comments from the group?
Yeah, I guess we are all good.
Yeah, I guess so. In that way, then again, I want to thank everyone for joining the webinar. Kathy has just put into the chat a link for a survey to provide feedback about the webinar today. So please access the link and provide your feedback. We'd like to hear your thoughts and obviously continue to refine and improve the webinar series moving forward. So thanks for taking the time. Thank you again, Hiroki, for the excellent talk, and wishing everyone a happy Wednesday.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah,
Bye.
take care.